in this video I'm going to show you how to make a tassel to go on the tip of a shawl. So this particular shawl is my Norwegian shawls pattern, and you can find the pattern for that at my website. The link is in the caption to this video. So I've actually made another version of this shawl, but in different colourways, and that's what I'm going to make the tassel for, is this actual shawl. So what you'll need is whatever yarn you want to make the tassel. So I'm using the same yarns that I made this shawl with. I've got three different colours of fingering or sock yarn. Of course, if you made your shawl in double knit, you could this would basically be the same process. You will need a crochet hook, which is one size smaller than what you made your shawl with, because we're going to make a very small cord, a fine cord on which to hang your tassel. So here you can see we've got a fine cord there. So we're actually going to crochet that. We're going to make a double chain. The other thing you will need is some scissors, sharp scissors, and you'll also need a piece of card folded in half. You don't necessarily need this. You could use a bank card or anything else that's kind of stiff. The reason why I like using a piece of card folded in half, you'll see shortly why. It just makes the process a little bit easier. So the piece of card should be longer than the length that you actually want your tassels. So here you can see for a tassel this length, I need to have a piece of cardboard that's about 9 centimetres long. So the first thing we're actually going to do is make the cord. We need a cord that is about 15 centimetres long for this particular the shawl. And I'm actually going to make a black cord, and I'm going to make a double chain. So hopefully you will actually be able to see this. Sometimes filming in black doesn't work out too well. So you need actually quite a long tail end before you make your slip knot loop, and we're just going to use a double thickness of yarn here for the slip knot loop. So because when you're making a double chain, you are actually using the tail end of the yarn, so this long tail, and you're also using the working yarn. So you need to set yourself up so that the tail end is at the bottom and the working yarn is at the top. And the way it works is that you go between the two yarns and you yarn over with the tail end, and then you chain with the working yarn. So you're drawing off those 2 loops you've just made. I'm just going to tighten that. Between the yarns, yarn over with the bottom, chain off with the working yarn. Between the two, yarn over, chain off with the top. Another analogy that some people find quite useful is to go between, scoop and chain, between, scoop and chain. So what you're looking for is actually quite a nice tight cord. So once you get the hang of it, you should be able to adjust your tension to make it quite nice and tight and compact, because you just want it to look quite neat. And this is a really useful chain, really useful cord to make, because it's got a bit more substance than just a plain old chain. and it does work up pretty quickly. If you happen to drop your cord at any point and you're unsure about what's going on, just remember that the one on your hook, the loop, the live loop on the hook, whatever yarn that is attached to, that is always the working yarn, and the other bit of yarn is always the tail end. So should you need to reset, just check where this live loop's pulling from, which is the working yarn, so put that at the top, and the other one will be the tail end. So I'm going to go ahead now and I'm going to make this cord about roughly 15 centimeters long. So I'll see you back in a minute. So I've made my chain, my cord, and it is about 15 centimeters long. So I need to finish it off now. And I do that by dropping the ruler, cutting the yarn, both the tail end and the working yarn, and then drawing both of those through the live loop, just like you would finish off a normal chain. Just going to trim that off. Next we are going to attach this cord to the tip of your shawl. So if you whatever the central stitch of your tip of your shawl is, in this case it is we've got a double crochet there, or UK treble, as our centre stitch. So I'm going to put my hook in there, and then I'm actually going to pull a cord through with my hook, but I'm only going to pull one end through. So we've got our cord attached there, and now we need to tie a knot in this cord. You can tie 2 knots or 1. So if you have a look at this other tassel I've done, I've actually done 2 knots. I've done 1, and then there's 1 knot inside there. So it's up to you what you prefer the look of. I'm also going to do 2 knots for this one. So once you've got it through your central stitch on the tip of your shawl, you just need to make sure that you've got this divided halfway evenly to make sure you've got enough cord for knotting. So if you're doing a double knot, i.e. you've got a knot above the tassel, as well as you also need a knot for to actually attach the tassel to. You can actually use a crochet hook to make these knots. So you just wrap the yarn round and then pull the ends through the middle with a hook, and then try and pass that knot rather, as close to the top tip of the shawl as you can. You don't really want too much space there. And now I'm going to make my second knot, and as you can see, it's a bit, probably could have done with making that a little bit longer, but I'm just going to pass those tail ends through the middle, and then this is going to be the knot that I'm actually going to attach my tassel to. So doesn't look particularly neat at the moment, but this second knot will be hidden by your lovely tassel. So to make the tassel, I now need to find my bit of card that I prepared, and I need to make 4 sets of tassel yarn, and this is only so that we can evenly distribute all the strands of the tassels around. And also, if you're using multiple colours, this gives you an opportunity to mix up the colours. So I think I'm going to go for a single coloured tassel with the orange don't know if I've actually got enough yarn, but hopefully. And then I'm going to use this antique china, which is almost white, as the wrap around the centre of the tassel. So I'm going to do eight wraps, 4 lots of 8 wraps. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then cut. And then I'm going to cut that by going between at the bottom where I've folded the card. I've got the 2 sections of card, and I'm going to use that to help me cut the tassels. So you have to be quite organised here and do this on a, you know, a work surface where you've got enough room to make sure everything is kept in some kind of order. So that's one set, and I'm going to do 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's the second set. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Third set. And the fourth set. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Should still be alright. Okay. So there's my 4 sets. So the next thing I want to do is create a horizontal bit of yarn which I will use to tie all of these tassely bits and secure them onto the knot. So that's why it's actually sometimes quite helpful to have the 2 knots, because you can, that horizontal bit of thread that you're going to attach everything to needs to go above whichever knot it is you're if you've only got 1 knot, it goes above the only knot. If you've got 2 knots, it's going to go between the 2 knots. You don't have to do 2 knots. This is just decorative for an extra little bobble above your tassel, and it's completely optional. So you need your horizontal bit, which is going to secure these tassels. And then the centre of these needs to be roughly the centre, roughly where this horizontal strip is going. So we are placing, so what we want is we want all of these strands to be wrapping around evenly around our knot. So that's why we do 4 sections, because we put 2 sections underneath, and as I said, it also, if you've got multiple colours, it helps you to divide the colours up, spread the colours better. So I've got my 2 sets of 4 there, with my horizontal piece of yarn going lined up so that it's between the 2 knots. And then I'm going to lay my other 2 sections over the top of the knot, and we're going to try and gently spread those around. And the thing is to be careful not to move this horizontal one, because you've already placed it quite carefully to the exact spot where the knot is. So the next thing is you are going to secure the tassel strips tightly above the knot, or in this case between the knots, by pulling that very tight. I actually like to pull it really tight, double check that it has actually caught the knot, because that can happen sometimes. You can accidentally not catch the knot and then a tassel will fall off. So I'm actually going to wrap that round very tight. Make sure you don't break the yarn a couple of times to secure it. So that is now nice and tight. And again, tie a double knot there. And this yarn that you've used, you can incorporate that into your tassels by trimming it roughly the same size. Now comes the next phase, which is getting all of these tassels and allowing them, the strands, and allowing them to hang down, and just checking that you have actually evenly distributed them. So you can see here, these are really nicely distributed. I can't see my knot at all underneath. I can see the top decorative knot, but the one that's adding body to the head of the tassel is well hidden. I can see the tail ends of my cord popping through. So at this point, very carefully, I'm actually going to trim these off so that they don't ruin the look of my tassel. And then this is a bit like hairdressing. You've got to sort of, with your fingers, or you could actually even, if you're very careful, you can even use your crochet hook to kind of smooth down all of these tassel strands. Okay, the next phase is creating the head of your tassel. As I said, for this one I think I'm going to use this colour, and this is also a personal choice, because you can make it just very simple with maybe 1 or 2 wraps, or you can make this part of a feature by doing actually lots of very deliberate wraps that creates quite a wide neck. But again, this is personal preference to however you would like it. I think I'm going to go for kind of medium thickness of neck on this tassel. So that means I need to make sure I've got, you know, reasonable amount of yarn, not too much because you'll get into a bit of a tangle. I might even do this double thickness, but you don't have to do it double thickness if you don't want to, because it's actually just another element that could go slightly wrong. So here I'm lining this up underneath, and again this is, I'm doing this at a bit of a weird angle under a camera. If you're doing this flat on a table, you'll be able to do it much neater than I'm doing. What you're aiming for is you're wrapping this around, so then, as I said, it's up to you to decide how big the head of your tassel is going to be. And obviously you don't want it massive, because I kind of think in terms of proportions personally, I still think the main strands of the tassel should be longer than the actual head of the tassel, but you know, that's personal preference. So I'm just going to gently pull these down just to get them all under control so that there's no lumps and bumps. But again, if you're doing this, you'll probably do a much better job than me, because I'm trying to do this in front of a camera. So I think I want my head about this big, and I think that's probably okay. I mean, if you start doing it and you're not happy, you just start again and just sort of redistribute these tassel strands. So you want some kind of tension, but don't pull them too hard, because obviously you don't want to accidentally yank them off the knot. that they're wrapped around. So I think I'm going to go for a head about this big. So I'm just going to keep wrapping this sort of white yarn around at the same kind of tension. And then just checking where, trying to keep everything under control, just checking where this tassel is actually naturally falling, because I don't want the knot of this sort of falling at the back. So that's the front of my tassel. I've got a relatively wide white band. Now I'm just going to tie that off at the back of the tassel. So it might take a few attempts. It's you know, something that can sometimes go a bit wrong and you have to undo it and start again. So I think that will do. I think that's good. Because this, so if you're for the neck of the tassel, if you're using exactly the same colour as the colour you've used for the actual tassels, where you've tied it in a knot, this bit here, the bit that's naturally hanging down, you can just trim that off and it will just blend in with the tassels. The other end of the knot that's poking upwards, that will never hang properly, so that end you do need to sew that into the head of the tassel just to hide it. So let's just get a needle. I'm going to thread that, and I've got to sew in both my ends because obviously my neck of my tassel is a completely different colour. So I'm just going to go into the neck. I'm going to pop up through the head there. I've got double thickness, so I just need to make sure I've pulled that tight, and then I'm going to trim that off, and hopefully that should disappear in there. And same with the other bit. If yours is the same colour, at this point you will just trim it to match the rest. Mine is, that's not going to blend in at all. So I'm going to do the same with this. I'm going to tuck it up through the back of the neck, pop it up through the head of the tassel, and trim that off. Okay. So here is my tassel. I'm just going to rearrange those a bit because that knot has popped through. Okay, that's much better. And now comes what I think is the fun bit, where you can trim your tassel. Unless by some freak accident all your ends are exactly the same length, you will need to trim your tassel. So I'm just going to sort of comb them out with the tip of my hook. And then this bit is a bit like being a hairdresser. So you're kind of getting the yarn between your fingers to level them out, and then you're going to trim. So start off by trimming small amounts, because just like hair, if you trim off a huge chunk in one go and it's a bit wonky, you have to keep trimming and trimming to straighten it out, and then you end up with a stunted tassel. These scissors are rubbish. And then you're just going to keep rotate the tassel and squeeze with your fingers very gently, and then trim. And just keep doing that a little bit at a time, making sure it's level. Hopefully you got better scissors than me. Oops. See, the blunt scissors end up, you saw then that that's snagged and pulled if you start pulling the tassels, it will distort the head. So I think I'm going to just go one more time here. And again, I've just pulled that because my scissors are rubbish. And then I think I'm happy with that. There you go. If you give that a go, let me know. How did it go? Did you get a lovely tassel? Don't forget that this pattern is called the Norwegian Shells pattern, and it's available from my website and various other places, but there's a link in the bio where you can check out where you can get it from. Thanks for watching.